It was just another gray morning off Highway 91. The sky looked like it had been poured from a concrete mold, heavy and flat, and the air smelled faintly of gasoline and rain that never actually fell. I was wiping windshields at the Chevron station. Same cracked pavement, same flickering fluorescent lights, same dull hum overhead. Everything was monotonous, rhythmically predictable, until she drove up a jet black Mercedes. Worth more than my entire life savings, gleamed under those shabby lights like it didn't belong in this world. The kind of car that makes you straighten your back without thinking about it. And there I was, tired eyes, oil-stained shirt, a name tag that read Tom. Not my name, but close enough. Lately, everything in my life had been close enough. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a charcoal suit that looked like it had been stitched by angels themselves. Perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect calm, like the world bent itself to her schedule. She looked at me once and I felt like she could see everything. All my failures, all my shame, all my years of scraping by. Then she asked, "Excuse me, are you the son of Richard Cole?" Those words hit me like a freight train. My father's name hadn't been spoken aloud in years, and suddenly there it was, cutting through the stale gas station air like a knife. "My father died broke 20 years ago," I said slowly, my voice catching somewhere between disbelief and exhaustion. That's when my hand began to shake. So badly, I dropped everything. The squeegee clattered to the cracked concrete, blue cleaning fluid splattering across my cheap Walmart boots, the ones I bought after pawning my leather dress shoes just to make rent. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink at the mess. She simply stood there, calm, composed, holding a leather briefcase like it carried the secrets of the world itself. "Richard Cole," she repeated softly. "Mechanic. Owned Cole's Auto Repair on Riverside Drive. Born 1942. Died 2005. My throat went dry. "Yeah," I managed. "That was my dad. But if you're here about some debt or something, he's been gone 20 years. There's no estate. He left nothing." And then she smiled. Not a smug smile. Not a "I know something you don't" smile. It was deeper than that. A knowing, quiet smile. Like someone about to deal you a winning hand without saying a word. "Mr. Cole," she said, "your father left considerably more than nothing. My name is Elaine Dorsett. I'm the executive assistant to Roland Ashford, CEO of Ashford Technologies." Ashford Technologies. The name rolled off her tongue like something out of a dream I couldn't afford. The kind of company I used to negotiate with back when my suits were real and not thrift store approximations. "Your father," she continued, "made an investment with Mr. Ashford in 1989. I laughed. Not a little chuckle. A harsh, bitter, disbelieving sound that echoed across the empty station. "My father? Investment? Lady, you've got the wrong guy. My dad couldn't afford proper shingles for the roof. He patched it with aluminum cans. He drove the same pickup for 30 years and ate bologna sandwiches every day. He didn't invest, he survived." She didn't answer. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a photograph. Old. Faded. But there he was. My father. Grease under his fingernails, standing beside a classic car and a young man in torn jeans. Both of them grinning like they'd just hit the jackpot. "October 15th, 1989, she said. "Your father took out a $10,000 loan against his house. He invested it in Mr. Ashford's startup, a 0.2% stake, $10,000. My father's life savings, poured into a tiny fraction of a company that, until now, had seemed completely irrelevant. Mr. Ashford has been trying to find your family for years," she said, "to inform you that the investment has matured." Paper towels slipped from my hands. Miguel, my coworker, called out behind me asking if I was okay. I wasn't, not even close. There I was, standing in a gas station at 6:47 a.m., wearing another man's name, cleaning windshields, and listening to a stranger tell me that my father, a man who died with $400 to his name, had somehow made an investment that still mattered decades later. "How much?" I whispered, barely daring to hope. Elaine glanced around the empty station, the broken light above flickering overhead, strobing us in pulses of shadow and reality. "Mr. Cole," she said carefully, "I think you should sit down. Call your manager. What I'm about to tell you, it will change everything. Everything. Because 6 months earlier, my life had already fallen apart. I had nothing left that resembled my former self. The divorce had finalized, the business gone, the house lost. Now I worked at Chevron for $11 an hour. Barely enough for rent, food, and that constant companion, shame. My name tag said Tom. My manager hadn't bothered to order a new one when I started. "Close enough," he said. Close enough to Thomas Cole, founder of Cole Transportation Solutions, a logistics company that started with a single borrowed truck and a notebook of contacts. 12 years of work that led to 47 trucks, $3 million annual revenue, a family I thought was proud of me. And then, gone. Just like that. Patricia, my ex-wife, had taken it all. The house, the accounts, even the Mustang I was restoring with my daughter on weekends. Her lawyer had been merciless. By the time it was over, I was standing outside the courthouse with nothing but my clothes and a cardboard box of old invoices. "You'll never build anything again," she said, diamond earrings catching the sun. "Men like you get one shot. You just lost yours." Her smile haunted me, just like her Instagram posts from Cabo, champagne in hand, the ocean behind her, captioned, "Living my best life." And yes, I saw them. On Miguel's phone. Because I couldn't afford my own, my daughter Hannah barely spoke to me anymore. Her last text cut deeper than anything else in my life. "Dad, you're starting to embarrass me. Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. My friend saw you at the gas station. Can't you get a real job? A real job. One that once meant boardrooms, contracts, handshakes that meant something. Now it meant pumps, receipts, and the smell of burned coffee." My mother, fading in an assisted living facility, could barely remember who I was. Dennis, my brother, called every week. "Come stay with us, Tommy. Regroup. This isn't you, but shame roots you in place. How do you explain that you sold your car? That sometimes leftover hot dogs are dinner? That your life, once so full of promise, now is gas station gray?" The nights were the worst. Lying on a thin mattress in a converted garage, staring at a cracked ceiling, questioning how someone could fall so fast. From CEO to cashier, from Thomas to Tom, from somebody to nobody. And then, that morning, the Mercedes, the woman, the briefcase. My father, Richard Cole, a man who had worked his entire life just to keep the lights on, somehow made an investment that survived. $10,000. 8.2%. I couldn't stop repeating the numbers in my head, trying to calculate, hoping I was wrong. Elaine stepped closer, her voice dropping like she was revealing a state secret. Mr. Ashford's company went public in 2003. That 0.2% stake, adjusted for splits and acquisitions, is now worth... Her lips moved. I couldn't hear. My brain refused to process it. "And Mr. Ashford has instructed me to personally ensure you receive every cent with interest." The world blurred. Pumps hummed. Miguel's voice faded. For 20 years I believed my father left nothing. But maybe he had left everything. Because of one choice. One risk. One belief made in a dusty garage 3 decades ago. I looked at the photograph again. My father, beside a young Roland Ashford. Grease, jeans, smiles, and a promise that had finally come due. I could almost hear Dad's rough, kind voice in my head. "Honest work is noble work, Tommy. But smart work, that's legacy." Elaine closed her briefcase. "Mr. Ashford would like to meet you in person. Today, if possible. There are documents you'll need to sign. Meet me." The CEO of one of the country's biggest tech companies wanted to meet me. The man cleaning windshields at a Chevron. The man wearing someone else's name tag. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to breathe, didn't know how to prepare for a moment like this. And in that stuttering flicker of fluorescent light, with blue cleaner splashed across my boots, I realized this was not just a meeting. This was a turning point, a doorway swinging wide after decades of dust and struggle. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the world rewards quiet, unseen decisions. The ones no one else remembers, the ones that seem small, meaningless, until they explode into something life-altering. And as I stared at that black Mercedes, at Elaine's calm, composed face, at the photo of a younger Richard Cole, grinning with a future he never lived to see, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The kind that makes your stomach flip and your heart pound, that makes your mind spin with possibilities you'd never dared imagine. What would it mean for my life? For my mother? For Hannah? For Dennis? For me? Could I really step back into a world I had lost? Could I reclaim everything that had been taken? Could one investment really undo 20 years of struggle? And most importantly, how had my father known? How had he foreseen this moment tucked away in a dusty garage while the world slept and we survived, barely scraping by? I took a shaky breath, picked up the photograph, stared at Dad one last time before looking at Elaine. "Okay," I said, voice barely audible. "Let's go meet him." Because I had no idea what I was walking into. But for the first time in years, I felt alive, and that, my friends, was only the beginning. The story my father started decades ago, a story of risk, faith, and a legacy hidden in plain sight, was about to unfold. And I was standing right in the middle of it, completely unprepared for the whirlwind that was coming next. The kind of whirlwind that could change everything. The kind that makes you wonder, what else have you been missing all this time? What secrets wait just around the corner, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment they'll flip your entire world upside down? And as the Mercedes door clicked shut and we pulled out onto Highway 91, I realized I was about to find out. It was one of those mornings where the sky seemed to press down on the earth, a heavy, unbroken gray, the kind that made every color fade, even in your soul. The air smelled faintly of gasoline, of rain that never fell, of asphalt and tires. I was behind the counter at the Chevron station on Highway 91. Same cracked floor, same humming fluorescent lights overhead, wiping windshields, passing the hours in a rhythm that had become my life. Monotonous, grinding, unremarkable. Until she arrived. Jet black Mercedes. Rolled up to pump 3, gleaming in a way that made the fluorescent lights look like they'd been dimmed on purpose just to highlight it. The car wasn't just expensive. It radiated presence. Every curve, every polished detail screamed wealth, power, and a life I'd long since thought belonged to someone else. And there I was, wearing a grease-stained shirt, a name tag that said Tom, standing in the middle of spilled lottery tickets and coffee stains, wondering how the universe could possibly be this cruel, or maybe this generous. The woman stepped out, tailored suit, gold watch catching the first hint of morning sun, shoes that clicked with authority on cracked concrete, hair perfect, posture perfect, calm so absolute it made you feel guilty for your own chaos. She didn't glance at the pumps or the coffee machine or the snack aisle. She walked straight to me. "Excuse me," she said, eyes locking onto mine with a force that made me take an involuntary step back. "Are you Thomas Cole, son of Richard Cole?" Every sound around me seemed to drop out. The pumps hummed faintly in the background. The coffee machine sputtered. The fluorescent lights flickered like the world was trying to warn me. Brace yourself. "My father died broke 20 years ago," I managed. My voice low, almost shaking. She didn't flinch. Didn't flinch at the smell of gasoline or the spray of windshield cleaner across the floor. She simply smiled. Not smugly, not triumphantly, but with a quiet knowing that made my knees weak. "Mr. Cole," she said, calm as the ocean on a windless morning, "your father left considerably more than nothing. My name is Elaine Dorset. I am the executive assistant to Roland Ashford, CEO of Ashford Technologies. Ashford Technologies. My mind reeled at the name, something I'd read about in magazines, in business headlines, in stories of fortunes built from nothing. And now she was here, at my station, telling me that my father, a man I had watched struggle his entire life, had secretly built a bridge to a world I thought I had lost forever. Your father made an investment with Mr. Ashford in 1989, she continued. I laughed, a bitter, dry sound that tasted like smoke and regret. My father? Investment. Lady, you've got the wrong Richard Cole. My dad couldn't afford shingles for the roof. He patched it with aluminum cans. He drove the same pickup for 30 years and ate bologna sandwiches every day. He didn't invest. He survived. Elaine didn't argue. She simply pulled a photograph from her briefcase. Old, faded, but unmistakable. My father. Grease under his fingernails, standing beside a young man in torn jeans, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. October 15th, 1989, she said softly. Your father took out a $10,000 loan against his house. He invested it in Mr. Ashford's startup, a 0.2% stake. $10,000. More than our house had ever been worth. More than my mother and I could have saved in a lifetime. And he risked it all. I remember the way the words collided in my head. $10,000, my father, a stranger's startup. A gamble I'd never imagined him making. My parents had almost lost the house in 1991. And here it was, still standing, still intact, not because of luck, but because of a quiet, calculated faith my father had taken to his grave. You're telling me he risked everything. For a stranger's startup? I asked, voice trembling. Elaine's expression softened slightly, though her tone remained steady. Your father never sold his stake. We tried to locate him in 2007, but the addresses were outdated. It wasn't until 3 years ago that we connected your picture from a trade publication. Something about your transportation company winning a Regional Excellence Award. That's how we finally tracked you down. I glanced down at the puddle of blue cleaning fluid at my feet, at my cheap Walmart boots, my grease-stained shirt. And for the first time in years, I felt a spark. A dangerous, terrifying spark that maybe the story wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. Elaine opened her briefcase and handed me a stack of documents thicker than any I'd ever signed in a boardroom. The returns had compounded over decades. Reinvested dividends, market growth, splits. The 0.2% stake my father had taken in a dusty garage while we struggled, barely scraping by, had grown into something unimaginable. I didn't hear anything else. Not the pumps, not the hum of the fluorescent lights. Coffee spilled behind me, inconsequential in the shadow of the reality I was staring down. $1 million, I whispered, the number lodging in my throat like a stone I couldn't swallow. My father, the man who ate bologna sandwiches so we could survive, who wore the same boots for years because he refused to buy new ones, who quietly fixed strangers' cars without asking for payment. He had left me $47 million. And not just money. Elaine handed me a manila envelope, handwritten, addressed to me, sealed with my father's care. Instructions for the moment. I would finally understand why he'd chosen poverty over possibility, secrecy over explanation. I called my manager. Gary, family emergency. I need to leave now. For the first time in 6 months, I hung up on someone who had authority over me. I stepped outside. The city stretched out before me. Cracked sidewalks, strip malls, the traffic humming like a restless animal. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Alive. Elaine drove me through the city, past strip malls giving way to office towers, past neon signs and skyscrapers, a visual timeline of my life from survival to rediscovery. She told me stories, tales I had never heard, about my father and Roland Ashford, how he restored a 1965 Shelby Cobra for Ashford, working for months, often for free, then hearing about the startup, returning the next day with $10,000 in cash, quietly mortgaging our home to place the bet no one else would. Roland Ashford, billionaire, visionary, the man who turned a garage project into a global empire. Waited in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Silver hair, casual jeans, t-shirt, commanding a billion-dollar empire as if it were a neighborhood garage. On the wall, photographs chronicled his life. And there, in the center, one I'd never seen. My father, young, smiling beside the restored Shelby Cobra. "Your father was the only one who believed in me," Ashford said, shaking my hand with both of his. He slid a box across the conference table, the original napkin agreement preserved under glass alongside my father's letter. A letter explaining a lifetime of choices, a lifetime of sacrifices, a lifetime of silence. Every word was deliberate. Every phrase a reminder that my father's life, his quiet, unassuming life, had been orchestrated with purpose. He had known that struggle, that hardship, that survival were important, yes, but he also knew that vision, faith, and timing could change everything. I felt the weight of it. I felt the gravity of decades of decisions I had never understood. I realized that the bologna sandwiches, the patched roof, the long hours fixing cars, they weren't just survival. They were strategy. They were investment. They were faith. And now, all of it, every risk, every sacrifice, every quiet moment of courage had been paid forward. Not just in money, but in opportunity, in redemption, in the chance to reclaim a life I had thought lost forever. Elaine watched silently as I processed everything, her calm presence a counterpoint to the storm of emotion inside me. She had done this before, guided people through moments they thought impossible, moments where the past and the future collided in ways that demanded courage. I looked down at the envelope again, the handwriting of my father, the ink slightly smudged but resolute. He had trusted me to understand, to act, to carry forward what he had begun in a quiet, unseen way, and I realized, finally, that the $47 million was more than money. It was proof. Proof that my father had thought of me even when the world hadn't. Proof that legacy isn't about what you leave behind for the world to see. It's about the unseen threads that bind generations together, that carry hope through hardship, that whisper in your ear even when you think all is lost. Keep going. As I stood there, staring at the skyline, the envelope heavy in my hand, I knew my life was about to change. But not just in the way money changes lives. This was bigger than divorce, bigger than failure, bigger than shame. This was a reawakening. And I couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets had my father hidden in plain sight? What other risks had he taken? What other legacies had he quietly secured, just waiting for the right moment, for the right person to step into them? Because one thing was certain, the story of Richard Cole, the man who lived humbly, worked tirelessly, and believed unwaveringly, was far from over. And now, I, his son, his heir, the man who had thought he was nobody, was standing at the threshold of everything he had ever dreamed for me. And somewhere, in the skyscrapers of downtown L.A., in a conference room with a billion-dollar view, Roland Ashford waited to reveal the full extent of what my father's faith, foresight, and courage had created. The kind of revelation that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and the man who had quietly rewritten the rules of my existence. And I had no idea how far down this rabbit hole really went. I could feel my hands trembling as I unfolded the envelope, my fingers brushing against the thick, worn paper my father had chosen decades ago. I read aloud, voice shaking, each word landing like a stone in the pit of my stomach. "Tommy, if you're reading this, you've lost everything. Good. Now you'll understand why I stayed poor." The hum of the air conditioning in the sleek, glass-walled office seemed to fade into the background. For a moment, all I could hear was the weight of those words, the decades of secrecy, sacrifice, and quiet love packed into the carefully folded sheet of paper. Everything I had thought I knew about my father, about poverty, about what it meant to struggle, about what legacy really was, was about to shift in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. I looked across the table at Roland Ashford, sitting calmly, patiently, almost as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment his entire life. His gaze was steady, yet understanding. I returned to the letter. Every sentence, every carefully chosen word, every deliberate pause my father had written, intended for me to find only after losing it all, held a gravity I had never experienced before. This wasn't just inheritance. It wasn't just money. It was a revelation, a challenge, a blueprint, a story that demanded I rethink everything I knew about the man who raised me, the life I had lived, and the future that had been quietly waiting for me all along. The envelope felt impossibly heavy in my hands, not because of the paper or the ink, but because of the decades of foresight, of calculated patience, of love that had been disguised as poverty. My father had prepared me for this moment, anticipating every struggle, every humiliation, every late-night doubt I would experience in a life stripped bare. And now, the secret he had guarded for 35 years, the quiet truth behind the $10,000 investment in a stranger's vision, was finally mine to uncover. The story didn't end with loss. No, it began anew. With everything. He had left me. And yet, even as I folded the letter back into the envelope, a question surfaced. One my father hadn't answered, one that would haunt me for weeks, months, maybe years. Why now? Why after all these years? And what exactly did he expect me to do with everything he had quietly built from nothing? The answer, I knew, was out there somewhere. Waiting. And it would change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The first thing I realized as I held the envelope in my hands was this. My father hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a story, a roadmap, a blueprint for understanding life, sacrifice, and the true meaning of wealth. That $47 million, yes, $47 million, wasn't just a number. It wasn't just a portfolio statement filled with dividends, splits, and growth charts. It was a reflection of decades of quiet planning, of sleepless nights, of strategic thinking and foresight that I had never recognized before. And now I had to make sense of it, to honor it, to finally understand why he had stayed poor, why he had invested in a stranger's dream rather than buying comfort for our family, why he had refused the easy route, the path that would have instantly erased every hardship we had faced. Dad could have cashed out in 2001, when Ashford Technologies went public. He could have taken $5 million and changed our lives forever. A house without a mortgage, cars that ran properly, a real college fund for me and Dennis, a life of comfort and security. But he didn't. I remember my mother, begging him, pleading as she counted bills at the kitchen table while the tiny light of our old lamp flickered. I can picture her face now, twisted with worry, crying silently in the middle of the night, thinking he was asleep while the weight of our survival crushed her. But Dad heard every tear, every sigh, every desperate whisper, and he nearly broke. He nearly broke. And then there was me, just out of college, raw, ambitious, hungry, running 3 jobs to build my own business from the ground up. I remember sitting in that tiny office at 2 a.m., exhausted, questioning myself. Am I crazy? I asked, not aloud, just to the darkness around me. And in a way, I was. Crazy, maybe, but also determined. A builder, a creator, someone capable of taking nothing and making it something. And that's exactly what Dad wanted me to become. If he had cashed out back then, if he had handed us the easy life, I would have built someone else's dream. Comfortable, safe, wealthy, but never truly mine. Rich kids don't work 18-hour days. They don't scrape, fight, claw, and fall only to rise again. They don't learn the grit that forms the spine of a man who can withstand anything life throws at him. That's what Dad understood. That's why he stayed poor. He didn't want to give me a gift. He wanted to give me everything I needed to become a man capable of building everything else. Roland Ashford watched me as I processed all of this, his calm, almost imperceptible smile acknowledging what my father had orchestrated. 3 months before Dad passed, he had come to my office, handing the letter over with instructions to deliver it only when I had truly lost everything. "You'll know when the time is right," he had said. "You'll feel it in your bones." And now I felt it. Every ounce of despair, every night sleeping on a van seat, every heartbreak, every failure, it had prepared me for this. Every moment of humiliation had been a lesson. Every setback a precursor to a revelation I would never forget. My father had been meticulous. He had sent me statements every quarter, but he never opened them. He mailed them back, stamped, "Not yet." The investment was growing silently, invisibly, while I struggled, thinking the world had forgotten me. And now, when the timing was perfect, the secret had been revealed. Roland pushed another box toward me. Inside was the original napkin agreement, preserved under glass. 36 unopened envelopes, each containing a quarterly statement my father had refused to open himself. He was a philosopher, Roland said softly. He believed wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you can build. Most people get it backwards. They try to get rich so they can become something, but the real journey is becoming something first. Then, riches follow, if they want to. I stared at the documents, my mind racing, my chest tight, my vision swimming with the enormity of what had been laid before me. Every sacrifice Dad had made, every risk he had taken, every silent choice to endure hardship instead of buying comfort, it wasn't random. It was intentional, purposeful, designed not for him, not for Mom, not for the world, but for me. I realized then fully that my life had been a test, a preparation, a slow unfolding of lessons. The divorces, the lost businesses, the nights of humiliation and despair, all of it had been a crucible. And the reward, when it finally came, wasn't just money. It was understanding. It was clarity. It was a roadmap to life itself, coded in the quiet courage and intelligence of my father. Holding that envelope, touching the ink he had pressed into the paper decades ago, I felt a connection to him deeper than I ever had, a conversation across time, a dialogue of sacrifices and visions, a whisper from beyond the grave. "You are ready." The $47 million, the portfolio, the unopened statements, those were just tools. The real inheritance was the wisdom, the resilience, the perspective Dad had cultivated in me through trial and loss. And I understood for the first time why he had stayed poor. He had been cultivating me, nurturing me, ensuring that when the moment came, I would be ready not just to inherit wealth, but to inherit purpose, vision, and legacy. Roland leaned back, watching me. There was no need to explain further. The truth was self-evident. The lessons, the revelations, the weight of a lifetime of preparation, all of it converged in my hands, in my mind, in my soul, and yet, even as the significance of everything sank in, I felt it, the spark Dad had left behind, the spark that would ignite a new chapter, a new life, a new legacy that stretched far beyond the money. Because the letter, the investment, the carefully orchestrated timing, it was all about transformation, about proving that the man who had once been broken, humiliated, and overlooked could rise again, could build, could create, could honor the quiet genius of a father who understood life better than anyone else I had ever known. And still, as I folded the letter back into its envelope, a shadow of mystery remained. The part about complete loss, the final secret, the lesson he had designed for me to earn, that was something I had yet to understand, something I would have to discover on my own. But I knew, deep in my bones, that what came next would redefine everything. The journey from the gas station to the glass-walled office, from despair to revelation, had only just begun. And the next chapter, whispered by the envelope in my hands, promised a story unlike anything I had ever imagined. A story of legacy, of strategy, of understanding what it truly means to build a life from nothing, and to inherit everything. The morning I walked into my father's legacy, I realized something profound. Wealth isn't just numbers, it's understanding. It's patience, foresight, and faith in people. And I felt it in every fiber of my being as I held that envelope. The letter Dad had left me. Not just instructions, but a map to becoming the man he always knew I could be. I thought about Mom. She had worked double shifts as a nurse, patched our clothes with scraps, sacrificed herself so we could survive. My chest tightened. She deserved better. And then Roland said something that stopped me cold. Did she? Or did she deserve a husband who loved her enough to ensure her son would understand the value of everything he ever earned? The truth hit me harder than any loss ever could. Every lesson I'd learned, every 16-hour day building my company, every failure and heartbreak, it had all been preparing me for this moment. Not the money, not the fortune. My father hadn't left me wealth. He left me the ability to handle it. I didn't cash it all out. I took $15 million, enough to secure Mom's care, set up Hannah's college fund, and restart my life with dignity. The rest? Left invested, compounding, growing quietly like Dad had always intended. Roland helped me structure it properly, trusts, foundations, generational wealth, because Dad didn't want me rich. He wanted me ready. The first thing I did was drive to Mom's assisted living facility, still in my gas station uniform because I wanted her to see the man she'd helped raise before I told her the news. I wanted her to witness the result of her sacrifices. Her face lit up when she saw me. Small hands shaking, she held mine and whispered, "He left us something. We're going to be okay." Her eyes, still bright despite the years, reminded me why I was here. "Your father was always investing," she said softly, memory flickering. "Not in stocks or companies, in people. In you, in Dennis, in everyone who couldn't afford repairs." That knowing, unwavering smile, quiet, sharp, resolute, anchored me. This was why I was alive, why I was capable, why I was ready. Patricia called 17 times after the story hit the business journals. Her voice, syrupy sweet, full of calculated charm. "We can work this out for Hannah's sake." I didn't answer. Instead, I sent her a framed photo of the gas station where I'd worked, with a simple note. "Thanks for the education." Miguel later told me she had shown up there, demanding to know where I was. Miguel had pretended not to speak English. One last favor from an unexpected friend. 6 months later, Cole Logistics 2.0 was born, but this time, it wasn't about chasing the largest contracts, the biggest profits, or the flashiest offices. It was about helping people build dreams. Small business shipping, startups like Roland's back in 1989, companies with nothing but ideas and determination. I reminded my accountant constantly, Dad could have cashed out $5 million, but he didn't. That philosophy guided every choice we made. Hannah started working with me on weekends. At first, reluctantly, her mother whispering doubt into her ear. But then she met our clients, saw the difference a reliable shipping partner made to someone starting from scratch. She looked at me one afternoon and said, "Dad, I get it now. This isn't just about moving boxes. No," I told her. "It's about moving possibilities." Dennis flew in from Arizona when I bought back Dad's old garage, transforming it into our first distribution center. In the storage room, untouched for 20 years, we found Dad's toolbox. The top drawer held a note. "Tools don't make the craftsman, but a good craftsman takes care of his tools. Take care of each other." Dennis now runs the Phoenix branch. "We're not chasing empires. We're chasing purpose. Every employee owns a piece of the company. Real equity." The story of Richard Cole and the napkin. Investment has become legend within Cole Logistics. 2.0, a reminder that betting on people pays better than betting on profits. Elaine still checks in, though her job is technically done. Roland became a mentor, a board member, family even. "Your father saved my dream," he said recently. "Now I watch you save others. It's a hell of a thing to witness." Just last week, a young man walked into my office, lost his tech startup in a bad partnership. No capital, no connections, just hunger and a hand-drawn blueprint. I wrote him a check for $10,000. Why? I pulled out the framed napkin agreement hanging on our office wall in every branch. "Consider this your napkin moment," I said. "Sometimes staying poor is a choice, but being rich, that's about knowing when to bet on someone else's hunger." Mom will be 73 next week. Dementia, creeping, clarity fleeting, but when she looks at me and says, "Your father would be so proud. Not of the money, Tommy, of the man." I finally understand. Richard Cole, the mechanic who died with $400 in his checking account, was the richest man I've ever known. He knew what Patricia never could. You can take a person's business, their money, even their reputation, but you cannot divorce someone from their destiny. Dad didn't leave me a fortune. He left me something far greater, proof that rock bottom is only a foundation if you know how to build. Now, as I watch our office buzz with energy, people chasing dreams like mine once were, I realize the story doesn't end with inheritance. It begins with understanding, with passing on what really matters, with building something that lasts. The lessons Dad embedded: patience, foresight, faith in human potential. That is true wealth. And Coley Logistics 2.0 is only beginning to show the world what can be built when people are believed in, empowered, and trusted. Some legacies aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in people, in opportunities, in the lives you touch, and somewhere, in that small garage-turned-distribution hub, you can still hear the echoes of my father's wisdom in every handshake, every contract, every delivery. Build something that matters. If you listen closely, you might just hear the napkin rustle in the wind, reminding you that sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you were really meant to find.